My name is Florent Grenier. I'm a French botanist. I first came to South Africa when I was 16. I volunteered on a nursery in Grafenet in Eastern Cape. At that age I was interested in succulents and I just wanted to learn English, so I went on my own in South Africa, and that's how I got interested in the succulents of Southern Africa. And then my dad joined me and he took me to Namaqualand. At the time I couldn't drive, so that's how I got to know Namaqualand. For 4 years we went to Namaqualand to just explore for succulents and bulbs and all those amazing plants. Then after high school I started studying biology. I did a master's in evolutionary ecology, and then I had to start a PhD, so I was lucky I had a whole year of funding from my school in Paris to go out and explore and find a PhD project that I could work on. So I went to Namaqualand because I thought there was probably something I could study. For more than 4 months that year in 2015 I went all over Namaqualand, climbing hills and mountains and looking around, and I ended up choosing long-tongue flies as a study system. So long-tongue flies are a category of flies which have tongues more than 2 times the length of their body. They use this tongue to actually forage for nectar within flowers which have very deep tubes. So the nectar is only available to insects which have very long tongues, such as the long-tongue flies. Yeah, so I wrote up a proposal and I got my PhD funded, and for the next 3 years I was out in Namaqualand 4 months every year to work on the long-tongue flies. But 4 months is quite a long period, so over 4 months you have time to look at other things, take photos. You know, 2015 is when the drought started in Namaqualand. Very bad drought. It intensified in 2016 and even more in 2017. In 2017 it was quite a catastrophe. Most of the Namaqualand got less than 30% of what they expect normally. So that was, from an ecologist point of view, that was quite bad to see, because there was massive die down in the plant communities. So there's places where most of the vegetation just died during that year. Yeah, that was quite depressing. Such droughts, they might become more and more fierce and regular according to the predictions of climate change. And in a situation in Namaqualand where most of the land is farmed for sheep and goats, it's making things worse, because the vegetation resources are used to the maximum extent, and in the drought years the sheep and the goats are going to overgraze the land, and it's going to open up the space between bushes. Then there's going to be erosion and the soil can be lost, and once the soil is lost in a desert land, then it's gone forever. So I realized that maybe I would be more useful doing popular science, just to publicize Namaqualand as the richest semi-arid land in the world for plant biodiversity. So that's how I got the idea to do my book called Secrets of Namaqualand Succulents. The point of the book is to show a lot of photographs, but also to show how plants survive and reproduce out in the wild. So I take interesting stories from science and I made them accessible to people. So that's what I did with the book, but now I want to keep going in this field of making Namaqualand better known to the wide public, and in order to try to make a point that we need to preserve it. So that's the big project for next year. We want to do a documentary. We want to show that Namaqualand is beautiful, it's got the highest plant diversity of any semi-arid land on Earth, and it must be preserved, because most of the plants of Namaqualand, they occur nowhere else. So it's a truly unique ecosystem that we need to preserve. I'm going to walk with a donkey from the north of Namaqualand, the Richtersvaart, at the Namibian border, all the way to Cape Town. That's just to make it more of an adventure. And during the trip I will go and see all the people, the farmers, the shepherds, wherever I come across in Namaqualand, and I'm going to ask them, well, how do you relate to nature? How do you, do you know how special the veld around you is? Do you care? Can you care? How do you struggle to make a living? How do you make a living? And I'm going to ask all those questions to show basically that, to show the face of the Namaqualand, to show how humans interact with nature, and to make a point that we need to help Namaqualand find better, more sustainable practices for the way they use the land, because at the rhythm at which desertification is going now, there might be very little left within just a few years or a few decades. So I'm quite distressed about this. I think we need to do more research to help farmers find more efficient, more sustainable ways of farming, basically, or find new crops that have got a high value and that use less land, so that you can leave some of the rest of the land alone to rest. So that will be the point of the documentary. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to work on for the next 8 months. And then there's all other sorts of projects. I've got more book projects. Actually, with the documentary, we might also do a book with photography or art. We're not sure yet. Depends on how much funding we get. That's it. Thanks.